Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Okay. Keaton is here.
You got it, Farah.
Nice. Okay. Thanks for joining fourth workshop of the DECA LDA. So there's just a few things. So my name is Farah again. You all know. Today's presentation is how to achieve competition success with Mohammed Ben Ridvik. Keaton and I are not your presenters, but um, uh, we're just the coordinators and we're the staff co-op student. And just a few housekeeping points that all your mics are being turned off and your videos are turned off right now, but we'll turn it on during the Q&A session and we'll turn you into a panelist. And this meeting is being recorded and being posted on the DECA website. And then again, there'll also be a 15-minute Q&A session at the end for all of you to ask your questions. So just send it over throughout the presentation in the Q&A function. And then Mohammed and Rivik will be monitoring that and answering them at the end. So yeah, if you have, yep.
Quickly, I'm gonna put Julia and Victor from the last presentation yesterday. I'm gonna put their emails in the chat right here. They said if you guys have any questions to email them and they'll be happy to answer.
Yeah.
Also, Mohammed, Ritvik, these students like to ask a lot of questions and a lot of good questions. So just make sure you guys have lots of time at the end because they will ask them. They've been great.
That's great for us, actually.
That's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Mohammed, you can start the presentation.
Perfect. Let me know if you guys can see everything. Okay.
Still sharing. Yeah, there it is. I can see it. Yeah.
Perfect.
Looks good.
So, hi everyone. Welcome to the soft skills workshop or how to achieve competition. I hope you've all been really enjoying the LDA conference so far. Sort of what we want to talk to you about today is sort of the opposite of what Evelyn and Puneet may have presented to you earlier. They were sort of taking a look at the technical aspect of competition success and what sort of technical skills go into actually solving a case. Me and Ritvik today really want to go through the actual skills, the soft skills that go into competitions, and sort of take you through how these sorts of skills are important both during cases, during the actual events, and how you can sort of apply them into other aspects of your life overall. So a little bit about us. I'll start off by introducing myself. My name is Mohammed Rasul. I am actually the president of the University of Waterloo DECA chapter, and I'm a third-year student in Waterloo's Accounting and Financial Management program, obviously majoring in accounting and finance. I'm currently working in accounting, specifically working at Ernst & Young in their audit practice. In terms of competition experience, I was actually a DECA delegate back in high school as well. I participated in it for a couple of years and attended some of the DECA provincials. Coming into university, I really wanted to DECA value with me because I learned so much from that experience in high school. So in my first year, I registered as a delegate and I attended DECA U provincials, as well as some other competitions from other universities and colleges across Canada. Beyond that, I also joined as an executive team, as you may have assumed already, sort of working behind the scenes on actually organizing the events, writing some of these cases. So I have some of that experience as well. Beyond that, I participated in some other external conferences, such as the University of Waterloo Accounting Conference, the EY Challenge. And to be honest, all that experience has really taught me a lot about case competitions, some of the soft skills and the technical skills involved. And I'm really, really excited to be able to share some of that knowledge with all of you today.
Yeah, my name is Ritvik. I'm a third-year student as well. By the way, we don't look anything like our pictures. We're completely changed. But I'm a third-year student in the Accounting and Financial Management program as well, majoring in accounting and finance. And yeah, just like Mohammed, I took part in a lot of competitions. I was a part of DECA in high school, and then I took on for further roles onto the university level, and I was the president last year of the UW DECA chapter, and I took part in a lot of competitions related to DECA U as well. And specifically in the accounting category, I placed top 3 in the accounting category in the DECA U provincials, and also a few other external competitions like the KPMG Innovation and Collaboration Challenge, UWAC with UWAC, the University of Waterloo Accounting Conference with Mohammed. So yeah, we had competition success with these external competitions as well, and we would like to share experiences with you. So what's on the agenda? So we'll be talking about what soft skills are. Then we'll be talking in further detail about the importance of soft skills. Now, the main focus on the entire presentation is the soft skills that you would require in competition success. And then after that, I'll be talking about something that I personally like to talk about. That's personalities and soft skills together and how they correlate. And then we'll be talking about the key takeaways and then the Q&A period after that. So, soft skills. Soft skills are skills that you require. They're very, very important, more than you would actually think. They're used in every setting you could possibly think of. So even right now, when I'm talking to you, I'm using soft skills by talking to you, and I hope you guys are using soft skills as well by listening to me. So that is one criteria where soft skills is actually used currently. But it is really valued in the workplace as well. So 97% of employees in a survey said that soft skills are either equally or more important than hard skills. And when you run through a DECA case competition, you're doing a simulation of a business case environment. So that itself shows that how important soft skills are. And soft skills are much easier to identify than hard skills upon first impressions. Now, when I'm talking to you right now, you can learn about my soft skills more than my hard skills because you don't know what my technicalities are. But I'm talking to you right now, and I'm sharing my experiences, and that shows my soft skills, not my hard skills. So soft skills definitely land a first impression. So it's important to like learn and prioritize soft skills as well. So, and yeah, on to the third point, less priority to soft skills puts you at a major disadvantage in any competition. I'll be talking about this later, but it takes 7 seconds to make your first impression. And your first impression is made by your soft skills. So it is really, really important to have a good amount of soft skills in focus for any competition. Now, Mark Cuban, one of my heroes, I would say, I know most of you know him. He's a shark in Shark Tank, and he's also the head of the Dallas Mavericks in the NBA. He said that in the next 10 years, a liberal arts degree will be more important than a traditional programming degree. So that just shows onto how important soft skills are in this space, because employers take a huge focus onto soft skills, and it is a great priority to ensure that you have your soft skills ready.
So that's a little bit more of a high level analysis of why soft skills are important. So I'm going to sort of take it from the lens of actual competitions and sort of make it a little bit more specific here. So I sort of like to break down the difference of soft skills into three main pillars. The first one being establishing a meaningful relationship with others. I think that part of the value of attending case competitions, especially when we're able to go back in person, is all the people that you get to meet. You know, you might be potentially working with people you've never met before. The judges you're presenting to may have been industry professionals, maybe upper year university and college students, even some of the people you kind of meet around walking in the venue. Some of these relationships can be really meaningful and long lasting. And as you sort of go along with it with your professional career, you'll sort of learn more about like why these relationships are so important and how they can sort of use these relationships to kind of leverage throughout your professional and academic careers. Even when it comes to things like case competitions, you know, maybe you met last year, and then you're looking for a new team to participate with in the seed competition. Well, you know, you might not be able to find some friends who person you met, and you know, maybe you guys had like you kind of hit it off there. Maybe you be good friends after the competition. That's just a new connection you can use. You can apply to a different competition, and that can sort of just lead to more and more competition success. Again, that sort of networking aspect of attending these conferences and events is so important. And I think being able to use those soft skills to develop those meaningful relationships is just a way to ensure that competition success and to maximize the amount of value that you're going to competitions. The next point is that it helps you sort of present your ideas easily. You can have the most elaborate and technical presentation in the entire competition. But if you sort of don't present it in a logical manner, The way you're kind of communicating it isn't very effective. You didn't really work with your team very well. That sort of shows in your presentation. And all that really does is take away from the credit that you deserve for the work that you put in on that technical aspect. So while all that technical information is incredibly important, being able to present it is equally, if not more important, because that's really what people see. People don't need to take a look at your calculations. Everybody sort of has, or a lot of people are going to have the correct calculations, but being able to present them effectively is really what's going to set you apart from the rest of the competition and make your presentation a little bit more unique. And finally, sort of just helps you adapt to hardship effectively. Now, when I say hardships, case conferences are designed to be a little bit tricky. The reason for that is you're taking knowledge that you're learning from relatively basic examples in the textbook and a classroom and applying it to real world scenarios. Now, real world scenarios are typically very, very complex. And a lot of times it's going to take a lot of critical thinking and problem solving to be able to get through some of these problems and arrive at a solution that you're comfortable sort of presenting in front of a judge and hopefully being successful with at the end of the competition. Now, some of those problem solving, critical thinking skills, teamwork skills that we're going to be talking about throughout the presentation are so effective to be able to go through those hardships and be able to sort of figure out how to craft unique solutions and ask better questions while going through these problems to get better answers, essentially. And finally, as I'm sure a lot of you are most interested in, soft skills are just essential to placing high or placing well, or scoring well, sorry, in the DECA competition. These are all sort of incorporated in the scoring process. And it's just so important that you all remember to consider them when preparing your presentations.
So we'll be taking a focus on to 8 soft skills that we believe are important in a case environment. So the ones that are on the screen right now are communication, self-motivation, leadership, teamwork, problem solving, time management, decisiveness, and conflict resolution. These skills are all very important in a case competition setting. So let's just go into further detail about them.
All right, so the first one I'm going to be kind of going through is self-motivation. Now, the way I sort of look at motivation is you can kind of break it down into 2 different lenses. One is intrinsic motivation. I'm sure some of you have sort of heard about it, or you can kind of imply from the name. Intrinsic motivation really does come from like internally. It's from your internal feelings and emotions about certain activities that you're a part of. Now, when it comes to actually competitions, I think intrinsic motivation is one of the most powerful ways to sort of motivate yourself as you go through competitions and as you sort of go through your professional and academic career. Some ways I sort of like to apply intrinsic motivation when it comes to case competitions is 1, work with friends. That's the beauty of case competitions. A lot of the time, you're not really going to be presenting by yourself, especially in a lot of DECA cases. A lot of them aren't done in partners. One example, as we sort of alluded here, was the University of Waterloo accounting conference. That was one that I worked on with Ritvik. I didn't really have any partners. It was in first year, and I was really eager to compete. So I reached out to Ritvik, who happened to be right beside me at the time, and I asked him, "Hey, do you want to take part in this competition with me?" And, you know, yes, we found some friends. We formed a group, and when it came to the actual presentation or the case day, it was an all-day event. We had a blast doing it, and it was definitely one of the most memorable events that I had looking back to my first year. The reason for that was that it didn't really feel like a task. It didn't feel like a chore that I signed up for, like just another exam that I had to solve. I was really just spending time with a lot of my friends, right? So we sort of went through the day, went through the workshops, and as we sort of worked through the case, that sort of team dynamic was very enjoyable and very satisfying. And it directly led to us achieving competition success. We ended up winning that competition. And I think a lot of that was due to the fact that we all sort of were comfortable with each other, we were friendly with each other, and we genuinely liked working with each other. And that just continued to motivate us in competition, and we sort of kept applying that and sort of persevering throughout, even though it was a particularly challenging case at the time. Another one I really want to highlight for all of you is to compete in categories that you're interested in. I especially being on the UW DECA executive, see a lot of students who feel that, like they're studying accounting, so they're only going to compete in the accounting category, or they're studying in human resources, so they're only going to compete in the HR category. When that really shouldn't be the case. I think the beauty of DECA case competitions in particular is there's so many different categories to choose from. And I think that people often look past some of the other categories that really show comprehensive level. For example, participating in fashion and retail management, that encompasses the aspects of marketing. It could encompass aspects of finance, HR. You never really know with some of these cases, because again, there are real world problems, and real world problems don't fit into like these simple boxes of one sort of discipline of business or science or engineering or whatever it may be. So take part in those competitions that you're interested in and sort of develop that sort of specialty, to show like, oh, I'm really interested in accounting or marketing, but I'm also really interested in the retail industry. And so I participated in these competitions, to sort of highlight that aspect. And you're just only going to be more motivated to do well and to compete because you're actually interested in the work that you're doing. And finally, remember to apply your creativity. I know a lot of people might think of these as sort of tests or exams, but there's so many opportunities for you to sort of get creative with your solutions. And that could be maybe adding a humorous aspect to it, though that sort of depends on the context of the case. And there's also the part of applying your creativity in the sense of sort of taking a look at things from a different lens. So you might have a relatively simple real business problem that you're taking a look at in a DECA case, but you might want to look through the key indicators and then take a look at a different aspect of it. Maybe there's like an environmental aspect that you want to take a look at. Maybe there's a different suggestion that you want to add to the business. If you have the time, add that creativity, add that sort of spin, that personal spin that you have on it, and sort of highlight your knowledge in that sense. And next we have extrinsic motivation. Now, extrinsic motivation is really motivation factors. So that could be like competition success, maybe it could be getting a job, maybe it could be getting into a particular school program, whatever it may be. So the way I sort of like to take a look at this is to set goals. And I like to set, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of SMART goals. So they're like sort of smart, specific and measurable goals that you can directly target. Coming into a competition, you might say that my goal is to win the competition. Like, that's a fair goal. It's specific, it's measurable, and you can attain that goal and work towards it. Sort of external motivation. Other way to sort of look at it is I really want to brush up on my accounting knowledge to these courses or to get ready for this program I'm going to enter. So let's say it's accounting, and you compete in the accounting category, and you sort of brush up on your knowledge before the case. You get the case, you work through the solution, you present it. Well, you sort of have practice working with that sort of these sorts of concepts, and now you're just going to be more prepared when it comes to school. Maybe in a future job later on, you might see a problem that is similar to that case, and you can apply. So again, these are just like more goals that you can set for yourself that you can eventually achieve, and you can use that to sort of look back on and continue to motivate yourself to participate in these competitions and to do well while in the competitions, despite certain problems that may arise while you're competing.
Yeah, so I hope you guys can still see me. My lamp just went out, but yeah. So the next key skill that I'll be talking about is communication, and I believe that this is the most important soft skill you need. So in a case competition setting, I'm just going to be talking about a case competition setting for this one because there's a lot of points for this one. So when you get into a case competition setting, especially when you're working with a teammate, the first thing you want to do is work in silence initially. Now, a key way of mastering communication skills is to be able to know when to use it and when not to use it. And when you first get into a case competition setting, when we first started reading a case, make sure you work in silence because you want to read the case, you want to get all the key details, and you don't want to disturb your teammate and you don't want to disturb yourself by talking to your teammate as well. So for sure, keep work in silence. And then after that, once you're done reading the case and understanding the key details in the case, make sure to bounce off ideas with each other. It's just so important. I know most of you already do this, but if you go to a case competition and you just read the case, you're like, oh, I got this. You just tell your teammate, oh, I got this. We're gonna kill this competition. That's the only conversation you have. You're definitely not gonna kill it. First of all, you're not gonna place anywhere because communication is so important in any key detail that you talk about. And when you bounce off ideas from each other and when you come up with a solution together, it's usually more robust. It definitely is more robust because you have your own ideas, you challenge each other, And that's what my fourth point says as well. Ask challenging questions when you get into a discussion, right? Ask challenging questions to each other, because that is very, very important, because these questions are likely to come up in your competition anyway when your judge asks you about them. If there's something unclear about your solution, your judge is likely to ask about that already. But if you ask that question earlier on during the preparation phase to your other teammate, I think that it's really important, because you're able to prepare beforehand before the judge actually asks you the question as well. So that's really important. And try to keep the conversation at 50-50. So what this basically means is that if you talk a lot, I'm a person that talks a lot personally, but one key skill that I've learned on throughout my university career is active listening. Being able to listen to other people while they're talking to you is so important, and actually processing that information, not just taking it in from one year and taking it out from the other year. Just processing that information and coming up with good conversations to basically make that idea more robust is so important. So try to actually incorporate active listening into your presentation format. And when you get to your actual presentation, it is really important to make a strong and soft initial impression. Now, what do I mean by both of these terms? They don't relate to each other. But what do I mean by both of these terms? Strong impression in the sense that your body language need to be upright. You need to talk when you talk to your judge. You need to be clear. And soft is showing positivity, having a smile. It is really important. As I said earlier, it takes 7 seconds to make your first initial impression on your judge and leave a positive impact, positive or negative impact. It takes like 7 seconds to make your first impression. So all of that is really important. And when you talk, articulate carefully. Make sure you take your time while talking and don't rush into things, because that is also really important. Because sometimes you get ahead of yourself. You're talking, and you're not able to think anymore. You're not able to think what your next point is, and you get stuck in between and you stutter. Oh, my light just came back up. But yeah, so you start stuttering, and that's one problem that I um, struggled with as well. So back in high school, and I've tried to work on it as much as I can, and I've become better with it as well. And again, when you're in a Q&A period, listen carefully. Make sure to to listen to your judge, active listening. And I'll give you an example for this one actually. So I went to a case competition recently, and I had a really hard judge. And he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna give you a hard question," and he went off for the next minute and a half. He kept asking questions, and it was one setting. So he asked like 5 questions in like one entire speech, basically. So us in our team, I'm there like I'm trying to process what he's asking me. Okay, I got the first question. Okay, I got the second question. Okay, I got the third question. I got the fourth question. But then while you're thinking about all this, it's hard to process all the information in. And that's what happened to me. I answered 4 questions, and the fifth one came up, and I'm like, what did he say again? And I forgot to get that point. And he pointed that out to me. He's like, oh, I asked you these questions, but the fifth one was the most important. So just make sure you listen properly. That's when I learned that listening carefully during the Q&A period is so important as well. So what I would recommend in this case is listen to the question, listen to the questions. Don't start thinking about the solutions right away. Take some time to process that question, and then take a few seconds. It doesn't matter if you take a few seconds right after listening to a question, and then you answer that question. So listen first, then process the information, come up with the solution, and then answer. Don't come up with the solution while listening to the question, because that sometimes you miss on the key details where the judge is asking you stuff. So that's really important. And another tip is use gestures when you can. For me specifically, I think that using gestures makes me more confident. It makes me articulate my point even further. So I think gestures in that case is really important. So yeah, just use gestures where you can. And my general tip, now one tip I always have for people is in a competition setting where you're able to take water with you, take a bottle of water. It is so important to take a bottle of water with you. Even if you can't take a bottle of water, drink water beforehand. But water is so important because first of all, it clears up your throat. So whenever you're talking, you sound more clear right after drinking water. And the second thing is if you're in a presentation setting and you're trying to think about the next point, this is a good tip. You just sip water, and that gives you an extra second or two to think about the next point. So that is really, really important for me, and I use that regularly. I've been using it in competitions, and it always works for me because no judge can come up to you and tell you that, oh, why are you drinking water during the presentation? Especially in a virtual setting, you can use it easily because water is something that you can use in competitions, and I've been using water as an excuse to like take to learn about my next point and talk about that. And the next point is in a team setting, build a queue with your teammate. So doing competitions online, especially for you guys, I'm not sure like if you guys will have competitions in person next or online. But if you have competitions online and there's a Q&A session, a good tip I would say is to basically mute yourself and tell your team to mute themselves as well. And whenever a judge comes up with a question, whoever wants to answer that question unmutes themselves basically. Because if two people in a Q&A period talk together, that wastes time and it doesn't look too good on you. So definitely build a queue with each other to ensure who's answering that question and who's not answering the question. So that itself is really important. And if it's in person, and you're sitting down together while talking to a judge in a DECA style case competition, tap on the person's leg or something, telling them that I'm going to answer this question, you're not. So there's no confusion there as well. So build that queue with your teammate when you're in a team setting to ensure that you answer the questions properly. So that's the general tips I have for communication.
So in terms of time management, the way I sort of like to break it down is both through the case preparation and during the presentation, or sort of managing your time for the presentation. So in terms of case preparation, always take note of how long you have before you actually enter the actual case. This sort of helps you understand how long you should sort of distribute to reading the case once you see it, and sort of helps you balance that time. Luckily for us, DECA case competitions are usually pretty standard when it comes to time. It's about 15 minutes for preparation, 5 minutes, and you're sort of done with it in that amount of time. So another way to sort of take a look at it to kind of help you balance that time is to take note of the key performance indicators. Now, Evelyn Panit may have mentioned how important taking a look at the KPIs before actually reading the case is. It helps you streamline your thinking. It helps you kind of reach a better solution because you can sort of read the case through the lens of what you actually need to answer. And taking note of the KPIs before you begin the case again is good for that reason because it helps you save time. You probably don't need to reread the case as many times as if you sort of took note of the KPIs afterwards. And if you think that necessary context of that case or the amount of time that you have, you could even like divide up the KPIs. So you could say, oh, like I'll do 1 and 2, you do 3 and 4, the case and sort of go through it in that lens. Another sort of way I like to make sure that everyone sort of understands when looking through a case is to ensure that your solution is comprehensive and viable, with the other introductions and conclusions and other aspects. The most important part of a DECA case competition and achieving that competition success is addressing those key performance indicators. Everything such as the elaborate intro, actualizing the problem, or a really long conclusion. Making a very basic intro and conclusion doesn't really take you very long. You can do it in a couple of seconds, but creating very viable and comprehensive solutions that answer all of the KPIs, that is what takes time. So that should be the first thing that you do. And then after that, look at how much time you have left. Then work on the introduction, work on the conclusion, and those other aspects. In terms of the actual presentation, it's not as possible with DECA competition sometimes, but if you can, practice. The more reps you get, the more used to sort of that, you understand the cues of how long you have left remaining. It just sort of helps you understand how much longer you should be taking while presenting. Again, in DECA competitions, you don't usually get enough time to practice, but if you participate in other cases, you might have that luxury. Another one, again, just balance the introduction, the content, and the KPIs. This all goes into managing your time because you have to allocate the total time towards these various aspects. Like I said earlier, focus on the KPIs. That should be like at minimum 80% of the actual solution, and then the introduction, conclusion, that stuff will sort of come afterwards. And finally, again, unless the case is specifically asking for it, you don't usually need to show your actual calculations. You can just highlight the key information. It's not really important to show the mechanical inputs that you use, just showing the actual answer and maybe a brief rundown of how you arrived at that answer. But don't waste time actually showing all the inputs and what you multiplied and added and divided to actually arrive at that calculation.
Yeah, just to add on that earlier point, in a university case competition setting, you're usually given a lot more time to prepare for a case as well. So like when you're given calculations, you usually put them in the appendix of your presentation. And judges might ask you about those calculations later, but you already have those calculations in your presentation as well, because everything runs through PowerPoint in university case competition settings. So that's really important. But the next point that we'll be talking about is leadership, and I won't focus too much on leadership because I believe that in a team setting, you have a leader that just happens to become a leader at some point. But honestly, I believe that in a team setting, everyone needs to be a leader of themselves, and each other as well, because that's really important. So leaders are usually the ones that establish your vision. Like there's usually a person who comes up in a case competition and in your team, and he or she is the one that basically comes up with the vision for what to do next. You have that one person, but there's also leaders who are able to motivate others. If you're able to motivate your teammates, you're already a leader, no matter what, because a leader's main criteria is to basically help their teammates and the people working below them perform better. And that's why you have a leader in the first place. And that's why leaders are important. And good leaders are humble and can adapt to difficult situations. Now, as I said, I'm going to talk about this later as well, but democratic leadership style is probably the best in a team setting because you got to be able to listen. I talked about this earlier. You got to be able to listen and take in input from your teammates. A good example of this was I took part in a pitch competition earlier as well. I took part in a lot of competitions, by the way, people. But it was a pitch competition, and I came up with an idea for a product that I really liked. But what happened later on was when I was working with my team, we found out that the idea wasn't the best, and I was the one who came up with the idea. So I was that was a natural leader in that situation because it was my idea and like we were working through it. And we came up with a lot of flaws with the idea. So we decided to pivot at the last second. An arrogant leader would not be able to pivot in any idea. But if you're able to pivot and listen to your teammates and listen to their input, it is so useful because the next idea that we came up with, we placed top 3 in that competition with. So it was really important to actually be able to listen to your teammates and that's what a good leader can be able to do. And in a case competition setting, we don't like to say that take a few sections and work on that. We definitely say to like take a section, work on it, but also collaborate with other people to like learn about their sections and them learning about your section. But it's important for you to take ownership of and out of your part. If there's a judge grilling your part in the Q&A period, I would say it's really important to take ownership of it and be able to answer that questions. So usually in a case competition setting, there's one person who is the financials person who knows all the numbers. There's one person who's a quals person who knows like the the qualitative side of things. There's one person who knows like the business really well. So you have those settings, and when a judge asks a question and it's about quals, the quals person, I would say, should step up to the plate and take ownership of that question and answer that question. Um, and in a leader and a team can have multiple leaders, but adaptability is important. So especially in a team setting, if you're able to listen to each other, bounce off ideas of each other, challenge each other, in a setting, in a team setting, you're both leaders of each other and yourself. So that's really important. So, and everyone has become a leader at some point. Anything you do in life, you've been a leader. If you play a video game, you probably led a squad. If you make a to-do list, you've been a leader of making a to-do list, and owning that responsibility to yourself. So everyone has been a leader, with themselves at some point as well.
Next, I'm going to sort of walk through teamwork, and a lot of the points behind teamwork and conflict resolution are sort of things that, especially Ritvik, has been sort of highlighting throughout the presentation so far. The first one is to remember to always listen to each other's ideas and your thoughts. The thing with case competitions is there really is no right answer, and everyone has these different backgrounds and experiences that they can use to apply to cases, um, and sort of arrive at a conclusion and a solution that you can present to a judge and hopefully do well with. So it's important to sort of not come in expecting to sort of know everything and sort of dominating the conversation, listening to other people, taking in those ideas and sort of compromising in that sense. Because everybody has their own perspective, own backgrounds, and it's important to consider crafting a solution. When it comes to the actual presentation, remember to sort of balance the presentation and the roles. You know, try to allocate an equal amount of time between everybody and don't have, and you know, especially when it comes to the KPIs, maybe you can do like one person addresses this KPI, another person does this, and so on. Just to show that balance, show that everybody has contributed well, even if it's not directly on the rubric of the case. It just speaks to the quality of the presentation. It shows that everybody sort of understands what they're doing and understands what they're talking about. And it adds to the credibility of the solution that you're presenting. And try to build new relationships, new partners and groups. You know, it's not just a thing where you're met with this person or this group of people and you never see them again. Like that is possible, but try to make that not be the case. Try to create those long-lasting, meaningful relationships that I was talking about earlier that you can hopefully use and later on in life, and you know, take advice from, maybe work with later on. They're all so important and part of maximizing the value of these case competitions. In terms of conflict resolution, one thing I'd really like to sort of highlight, like I said earlier, is understand people's perspectives and try to compromise. There is no right answer when it comes to cases, so try to understand other people's ideas, why they might be arriving at certain conclusions based on their backgrounds, whether it be education or personal experiences, whatever it may be, and try to see how that sort of applies to the case and how you can use it to create a better answer. And remember that these relationships can be meaningful and long lasting, and try not to sort of burn those bridges right away. If you're working with friends, you know, you sort of want to maintain that friendship and don't sort of get into these arguments over silly little details that could potentially be detrimental to the case, because maybe that person does have a really great idea. And although you might not think that it fits into the case, maybe it's something that nobody else has considered. And by adding it to your presentation, sort of setting yourself apart from the rest of the competition, which is only going to speak better for the quality of your presentation, and it's only going to lead to further competition success for you.
Yeah, so the next one is problem solving. I think I talked about some of this already. So I'll just skim over this. We don't have a lot of time left either. So practice beforehand. We talked about this earlier. And then take approaches that you would like to take to the case. Actively listen and then make sound decisions. And then during the Q&A session, take a second to process the thoughts before answering the question. Use the water trick if you want to for that as well. It's really useful, but you can take a second or two to like process that information. But the problem solving process, there's a few methods you can take to actually get around solving a few problems. The SWOT analysis, I think we might have mentioned this earlier with the other presentation, but it's basically strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. When you're given a problem, make sure to use these. You guys can look this up further in detail as well. But make sure to use the SWOT analysis to actually learn more about how to solve the case and how to like look at external factors and internal factors while deciding on what's the best way of like looking at the case. And the STAR method. The STAR method is used a lot in situational environments. So the first thing you would do is you would talk about the situation, what the problem is, and then you would talk about the task. What are you required to do? And then the action, what will you do about that problem, and what's the result that comes after. So if you go with that plan that four-step plan of the STAR method, you're able to be more clear with your analysis as well, and you're able to be more concise with it as well. So if you go to the STAR method, I think it's a really useful method of actually solving a case and actually presenting that case in a case environment, especially in a DECA case environment, because you don't have a lot of time. So I believe that the STAR method is really important to use. Yeah. The next one is decisiveness. So we talked about this a lot as well earlier. It's really important to be decisive with DECA cases, and it comes a lot with time management as well. So you have to make decisions effectively and efficiently, especially with DECA cases. Like it's so important because there's less time with DECA cases. And when you're decisive, you show confidence and capabilities as well. If you're decisive, if you're confident with your with your solution, it shows that to a judge, because when you present to a judge and you're really confident in your decision, it persuades them in a way, because they're like, oh, I don't believe in this, but he's so confident about he or she's so confident about it that I think that this is actually something to take into consideration. Because believe it or not, a lot of judges are stubborn in a way, and they have that one way of thinking, and it's really hard to make them listen to how your decision makes sense to them. So I think it's really important to just be decisive, because you're able to persuade a judge to like believe in you as well. And that comes a lot in the Q&A session as well, when they grill you on your solution. And if you're able to take that grilling and be able to answer it with decisiveness, because you're decisive, I think it's really important. So just listen to your internal GPS. Whatever comes to you, like whatever comes to your gut, on what the solution is, listen that first. I think it's really important as well. Because if you listen to your gut, it comes from within yourself, and you're more confident with your decision as well. So listen to your internal GPS, and if that doesn't work, then go on to other solutions that your teammates come up with, and own your decision. Like just run with it and die with it. Run and die with it in a case competition setting, because it's really important. Yeah. So the next thing I would like to talk about is personalities and soft skills. So in a conflict resolution setting, there's a few things that you guys can do, especially if you have a long time to go around a case competition setting. First of all, I would like you all to go to 16personalities.com. I think some of you might have done this already, and do a personality test. It's going to come up with strengths and weaknesses about you, and it's going to come up with soft skills that you can possibly work on to improve yourself. And it also comes up with like how you would react in a team situation, how would you react in a leadership situation as well. So 16personalities.com, Myers-Briggs personality test. This is what that is, the 16 personalities. And I'm a campaigner, and Mohammed, when he did the test, he's a consul. So like these personality tests talk a lot about what your strengths and weaknesses are, even what your career aspirations are, and talks a lot in detail about what your soft skills are and what you need to work on. So I believe this is a really good tool to ensure that you work well with others, you gel well with others, and you perform well in a case competition setting. Just to learn more about yourself, it's always useful. So yeah, I would just say I like psychology a lot. So it's really important to do this as well.
Okay, so now we can sort of begin to wrap up this presentation. The 3 points I really want to sort of emphasize and highlight, and to kind of wrap up why soft skills are so important, is one, the sort of foundational skills successful both in competitions, professionally, academically, and in all other aspects of your life. Secondly, add to the credibility and the quality of your technical presentation. As we were talking about earlier, you could have the most technically correct presentation there is, but if you aren't really presenting it in an effective manner, not working with your team well, that shows in your presentation, takes away from the credit that you deserve for the work that you put in. And finally, soft skills can be ever evolving and improving. You can improve them in competitions, in school presentations, at work, whatever it may be, and even just sort of in your daily life. You can always be improving them, and that's sort of the beauty of them. And the more work you put into improving them and making that a point, the better you will be at it. I think to talk about UW-DECA. Now, UW-DECA is sort of something that me and Rishbek have been a part of our entire university career. I'm sure a lot of you have done DECA, or all of you, I guess, have done high school DECA, but DECA at the collegiate level is a completely different experience. There's a lot more networking involved. The cases are all oral, and it's a much more social experience. And once you get to, if you do pursue post-secondary education, being on the organizing side of DECA competitions is such a rewarding experience. The events are so much bigger, so many people more attend, and the cases are a little more complicated, and it's just overall a much more satisfying and enjoyable experience. For all of you who are curious about the University of Waterloo DECA chapter or DECA at the collegiate level in general, feel free to ask us about that in the Q&A period coming up. We would love to answer any question you have about it, as we have a lot of experience when it comes to UW-DECA and DECA U in general. And we think it's extremely valuable for all of you to sort of take that with you into post-secondary opportunities that you may choose to pursue. So with that, we want to thank you all for listening to the presentation. We really enjoyed talking to you through all this, and we can take any questions that you have now.
Thanks, Mohammed. Yeah, before that, I'll just change everyone to panelists. So people will be sending their questions into Q&A and also the chat. So if you want to monitor those for questions.
Okay. I can't scroll up. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so there's a couple questions already here. I guess I'll read the first one out to you just to get going. So for the Q&A, what is the most common mistake DECA students make, and how can you fix this?
I think one common mistake that students make is they sort of try to, when a judge asks them a question, they might get a little bit flustered and they add a lot of extra details that they may not need to. I think what's important is to sort of understand the context of the question, and that's to sort of shed some light on the KPIs that they were assigned to you. So whenever they ask you a question, try to understand specifically what they asked you and make sure you actually answer the question instead of just sort of beating around the bush and saying a bunch of words to sort of try to get past it, because they will notice. And it just does take away some of that credit from the presentation that you deserve for your work. So just try to be concise as possible and directly answer the question and understand why they're sort of asking you that question.
Another question we have is, what influenced you to join DECA in university and high school?
So I can take this one. For me personally, DECA was a way to learn more about business for me, because I was an immigrant in grade 10, and I moved to Canada in grade 10 basically. So I was new to the country and I wanted to try something new because I wanted to learn more about business. And honestly, DECA was the way I got into accounting and finance, into this program as well, because I learned more about accounting and finance through DECA in high school. And in DECA University, I think the people in the University of Waterloo's DECA atmosphere were important to me. They were really nice, really kind. And I could see what they accomplished so far, and I wanted to be a part of that team. So the University of Waterloo DECA chapter is huge. And I just wanted to like be a part of that team to actually be able to organize competitions, see what comes in the back end, and that's what made me join UW DECA, the executive team in the university level.
Another question is, how do you believe that DECA in high school prepared you for university?
I would say that at the university level, it's a little bit different. It's pretty much only oral competitions throughout. So if you sort of participated in orals in high school, you sort of understand the deal behind it at the university level. But if you were sort of working on writtens throughout,
I think we'll cut out, right,
that
Didi?
critical thinking ability. Going through orals, you might have a better mind towards sort of that analytical side of things and taking a look at things from a different perspective.
Yeah, and the soft skills that you learn in high school are so important for the university level as well. So like that's what made me more confident in going into other case competitions and like DECA case competitions in university as well. Mohammed, are you good?
Yeah, I just came back. Did you answer the question?
Yeah, we heard like a good portion of it, the answer.
I I'm sure you're. um, there-
Yeah, we can go on to the next question.
Next question, how would you have time for University DECA with all of your schoolwork? What is the real value of doing it? Can you put it on your resume?
um, I would say that once you get into university, it's really all about finding that balance, right? You obviously can't go to every competition, and you can't join a million different clubs, and work with and balance that with all your schoolwork. But there, you do have a certain amount of free time when you're in university or college or whatever post-secondary sort of opportunity you pursue, and it's really just about finding that balance, being able to join one or two clubs, such as UW DECA as an exec, that's not really going to hinder your ability to balance your schoolwork very much. And then attending one, two, maybe three competitions in a term, something a lot of people do. And remember, it's just like a 1 or 2 day event. It doesn't go the entire day. It's just a couple of hours. So as long as you sort of plan your time effectively, know when things are coming, and remember to balance your time. It's really not that big of an issue when it comes to balancing your time, and you actually will get more value out of participating in it than studying for an extra 2 or 3 hours that day. And you absolutely can put it on your resume. It's something that I really, really do encourage because it shows that you're taking the initiative beyond just your lectures or your exams to learn the content and apply it to real world problems that you're going to be facing in the workplace. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so there's another really great question. So how do you guys deal with failures during your cases?
Okay, so during in a case situation, in a case competition situation, when you go through a solution, you're like, crap, where we talked about this in further detail, and I don't think this is the best solution that we can go with. If you have time, and all of you feel that way, pivot to another solution, and go about with that. But if you don't, run with it, run and die with it. Basically, that's what I would say. Because if that situation comes in, um, and your judge asks you questions about it, just be confident in your solution. That's what you gotta be. You just gotta be confident in your solution, because if you're confident, you can sell anything. In a way, a case competition is also marketing and sales in a way, because you want to sell your solution to another person. So that's really important. So that's one way to like deal with failures during your cases. But it is other extents that you would like me to talk about. But yeah, I can talk
I
about
just
that
want
as
to
well.
add, if you're talking about like from this perspective of like maybe not placing as well as you thought you would, just remember that as we sort of highlighted throughout the presentation, case competitions in general, especially when it comes to DECA, are just something you can always be improving. So even if you don't place well at one particular competition, it doesn't mean that you sort of wasted your time in that sense. You learned a lot about that particular technical aspect of business or math or whatever you competed in. You learned more about your presentation skills, your teamwork skills, and you will see that sort of reflected in future competitions that you apply to. So I really, as long as you sort of put your best foot forward and put in like your best effort, I do believe that there isn't really a failure in a case. It's just sort of more and more learning opportunities you can apply later on.
Yeah.
One more question is, at Waterloo, do you have to be in a business program to be in a DECA chapter, or do you just
No.
have to have business experience?
Absolutely not. To join as a delegate, we don't really have any sort of requirements in that perspective. I don't know how that is with other schools, but for our chapter in particular, there's no requirement to have a business background or experience because, as we said, cases are and real world problems aren't just accounting problems. They're not just finance problems. There are so many different nuances to these issues, and having different backgrounds is so important. Like a large percentage of our DECA delegate base is people from different backgrounds that have no business experience at all. In terms of joining the executive team as well, same thing. The more diverse your experiences are, the better. There's no criteria to have business experience or anything because the way we sort of like to share it is we don't see DECA as a business club only. It's just a way to sort of apply your knowledge in different scenarios in the business world, but you don't necessarily have to have an understanding of HR and marketing and finance to be able to succeed throughout in your experiences.
There are a couple people who want to know what's the difference between DECA University and high school, and what's the most helpful thing that high school students can do in DECA to prepare for post-secondary DECA.
Richard, do you want to take this one, or do you want me to go first?
Yeah, sure, I can take this one. So a high school DECA, we talked about this a little bit earlier as well. With university DECA, actually, there's no writtens at all. It's all orals. So that is one key aspect that's missing because university DECA thinks that students can easily cheat or they can go to test banks as well. So we don't want that. And we just want to go with the case competition setting. So that's one key important detail that's different between university DECA and high school DECA. The content is definitely more difficult and more challenging, especially when you go into your first year of university. When I took the accounting case category in the DECA U provincial level, there was nothing from high school that actually were applicable to what I did in that DECA case. It was a lot of content that was really technical. So I think that's important as well. So there's a lot of technical content in DECA U cases in the university level. So you definitely need to like read up on your case beforehand, read up on the content beforehand, and actually be able to apply technicals as well to be able to do well in university DECA.
I think we have time for one more question. What was the best advice that you got for case competitions?
It's a difficult one actually. Best advice, I would say it's
I have
sort
one.
of.
For me personally, when I did the KPMG Innovation and Collaboration Challenge, that was a KPMG competition. A partner was reviewing my presentation, and the one thing he told me like that to focus on in the most is to slow down. I go really fast when I'm talking. I think some of you might have noticed as well during this presentation, but slowing down while you're talking to emphasize a point is really important. Just to get your point across, because in the end, it's also like a sales pitch. And the most applicable sales pitch is the one that has the most impact. So you want to have a great impact on your judges. So slow down while talking was the one tip I was given in terms of soft skills.
Mohammed, did you have anything to add to that?
No, that's a good one.
If not, okay, awesome. I think we'll just wrap it up. Thank you everyone for your questions. That was great. You guys are doing a great job with asking your questions. Keep it up. And thank you, Mohammed and Rivik, for your presentation, your experiences as well. I think a lot of useful tips that the students can use as well. So we'll just wrap this up, and then we'll see you in the next presentation in like 1 minute. So yeah, thanks all.
Thank you.